Hey.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah. Now we have even more. We have just one person listening to us. So. I believe we should still start in a minute, and then if people join, maybe it's just too early and people are still working, or we're so dull they don't want to join again.
Okay, so basically, let's not wait anymore. So just to resume our yesterday discussion, right, about Scala. One question that would probably sum up the overall discussion is, I don't know, probably it's just to Maria and Orhan. They are mostly working with Scala, or at least more than us, right? So if we imagine that you're kind of starting your programming journey and have Java and Scala on your plate, will you still choose Scala, or will you go more traditional way with Java? I mean, is the current state of Scala and Java?
Definitely, I'll still choose Scala.
Okay. Is it because like all those the lack of pure functional things in Java, or why? What would be one main argument?
Okay. First, yes, I really like functional programming and functional approaches, and yes, it's that there are a lot of things in terms of functional programming that already exist in Java. But being honest, I don't have a big experience with Java, but I have friends who work with Java and colleagues, and I have an opportunity to hear something about the situation. Yes, these features exist in language, but as for me, I can say that it seems they are really frequently used, that it's just a common way of work. And I really think that there are really a lot of situations when this way works really good. So the point is that the fact that something exists in language, it doesn't make it language standard. So yes, we can work with Stream API, but in the most part of projects, we just won't do it. And maybe if we have a few minutes, I just can tell one case from my practice. Do we have a time for exciting personal stories?
Go for it. Why not?
Yeah, sure.
I participated in internal Scala course for partners. I was one of trainers on this course, and it was developed for Java engineers from D2 level to D4. So Java engineers with enough experience, I'd say. And it was, I'd say, 2 years ago, and Java 8 definitely wasn't something really new that time. And when we prepared program for the course, we just looked at list of topics and decided how much time we need for this one, how much time for this one. And when we talked about features that are pretty common to some things from Java 8, like option, like features in Scala, very close to completable features in Java, etc., we thought, okay, we don't need much time for this. We just say that it's something common and it will be enough. But honestly, it wasn't enough. We, after we run these sessions with these topics and we get the feedback, we understood that most part of trainees just didn't get it because they they know that these things exist, but don't have really good practice with them. So I'm not quite sure that the position all functional features of Scala exist in Java is working. It's just
Okay, Farhan, what about you?
Actually, in general, I don't try to. I wouldn't would I choose Scala or Java? I mean, I'm not looking from that perspective. I'm just it's just another language that I had an experience with. Did I enjoy working with it? Yes, definitely. I mean, it is a quite nice language, considering all that you can um, fully, let's say that they enjoy the functional programming from that perspective. But mostly what I've seen in a lot of scenarios, it's why, I mentioned actually that yesterday also. People usually think that if you're using Scala, it's very complicated and you have to know all the 100% functional programming in order to use it, but that's not really the case. But a lot of the projects, people still are using it as the object-oriented way of the object-oriented way of writing a program. So, I mean, I wouldn't say that I would choose if I was at the beginning, I would choose the one of the or the other. But it's just if I would have a chance, for example, right now I'm not using Scala in my project, in my current project. But if I would get another project where I would also start to use it, yeah, that would be awesome. And I would appreciate that because it's a nice language to write in. So I'm looking from that perspective.
Okay, I believe that sums up things about Scala. So let's move on and switch to probably if Scala is quite an established language, right, and has already established and known reputation with all its pros and cons. Then, our new target, Kotlin, is probably not at that stage because it's still young and promising, right? So we have an expert from Kotlin, an ambassador of local ambassador of Kotlin. So could you just briefly outline what's the state of Kotlin now and what is its positions and why should we pay any attention to it at all?
Well, it's not about paying attention. Honestly, it's about Java is going to go away soon. Well, let's not be that kind of direct, but let's start with the fact that it's not that new, Kotlin. It's been announced in 2011, which is 9 years from now, and the first kind of fully stable release is of 2016. So 4 years is quite a long time for a technology to become a mature technology. Many technologies being used in production nowadays are much newer, like let's say React Native or whatever. All the JavaScript technologies are newer. So basically, Kotlin is already a mature language. What I can say about it, I've adopted Kotlin on a project in 2016. I've been working with Kotlin since then in different conditions, though. In microservices, in kind of bigger applications, wouldn't call them monoliths, though. In Android, accidentally, I'm not an Android developer, but I've done some work with it. And for Android, Kotlin is just the savior, because you may imagine Android is still Java 7. So you can't even sort a collection properly, which is, and there's a whole lot of boilerplate in kind of original Android, which Kotlin just saves you from, because it's just so much more concise than Java 7. And it saves a lot of effort and improves the readability of the code dramatically. So it's quite obvious why this language has been adopted by Android first. Reason being Java 7. But even comparing to today's Java, Kotlin has a lot of fundamental kind of Java flaws, I would say so, fixed, like fixed on the language level, so that a developer can just not make a mistake. All these mistakes that happen accidentally, or they happen because the right code standards are not enforced in the project, which is kind of the same, because they are often not enforced. And you can't guarantee they will be enforced in every project. They just don't happen in Kotlin because it just doesn't let you to do things. That's important. And you don't need, unlike many other languages, you don't need any kind of specific actions to start writing Kotlin. You just create, you add it in Gradle, you create a Kotlin class, and you start writing code in your Java application, no matter what version of Java it is. That's pretty cool.
But like,
maybe away from the original question.
No. What just came to my mind is that you're kind of playing quite smoothly, but things are rarely like 100% smooth, right? So what else? Like, if it would be so nice, why would anybody stay with Java, right? So what is probably the main problem with like explosive growth of Kotlin usage? Is it just existing Java adoption rate or anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I believe the main point is people are just reluctant to change. They don't want to try new things, and they're not forced to because they have Java. They know Java and they continue using it. Especially on an existing project, you need to add a feature. You just write your code and that's it. And many, not all developers attend conferences or just read articles. Many of the developers are just writing code on a daily basis, doing things that they've learned at some point. And those people just wouldn't introduce a new language to the landscape. I think that's the main reason. Some other maybe, like I heard of specific support licenses. So when you have like a vendor platform, let's say Oracle platform, where you could which you're using and you're writing code to extend it, then if you write code in Kotlin, then Oracle may not want to give you professional services. Maybe because of the reason that their professional services don't know Kotlin. But
do they have any specific reasons behind that, or like
no,
just big?
They don't specify, and I believe it's not about Kotlin. They introduce those rules when people would probably start writing things in Groovy, which is really dangerous. So yes, I heard of that. I have never tried to kind of go and have a conversation with, let's say, Oracle and say, hey guys, can we actually use it and agree on some kind of compromise? We have or a win-win. I haven't, because I didn't have this necessity. I was just I used to be a ATG developer in the past. For those who know what this is, it's kind of it's a dodgy Oracle. Well, it's a dodgy platform from 1993, which used to be a pioneer in Java. They kind of invented JSTL and other stuff, but then it got so obsolete, and it's often these applications often run on Java 7, and Kotlin would allow bringing in cool stuff without upgrading Java, because you may have, let's say, a IBM servers that only run with Java 7 because you only have that license. So that's a valid case. And by the way, I heard from other companies, not with ATG, that they would do it because they have license agreement and they have to use Java 7 or Java 8 or Java 6, because Kotlin runs starting from Java 6. They would introduce Kotlin to kind of retain their developers, to give their developers a better place to live, because they can't upgrade the infrastructure. So that's I believe the adoption rate is at this level just because people don't want to learn. And in mobile, which is a little more, the platform advances quickly and you have to learn all the time. From what I heard from our competence center, it's like it's a no-brainer. All the Android projects are in Kotlin.
I'm sorry. Could I?
Yes, of course. It's a round table.
Yeah, I'd like to add, that's a question. Yeah, it was about Kotlin, but I think it affects not only Kotlin, but other languages we discussed. I'd say the problem more not in people who just don't want to learn something new, but it comes more from business requirements, because at first, Java has full backward compatibility, and it's really great for business. And business could just not see the reasons why should they move from Java to something else. And also the point is a huge amount of already existing code on Java. Again, just don't see any reason to change the situation. And I'd say if there were a lot of positions of Kotlin on Scala as much as on Java, there were much bigger amount of Kotlin and Scala developers around us.
That's the whole point. So even if you have code in Java, like inside the application, it's not about even using modules. You can just start writing code in Kotlin. It will work. There is one only thing that doesn't work, which I know about. It's Project Lombok. It really doesn't work. So if your Java application uses Project Lombok, you will unfortunately have to de-lombok the project, which is it can be automated, by the way. you can generate it can generate all the stuff for you and just commit it. But it's a bad thing, that the only one I know about. It's just and it's not that the minute you introduce Kotlin, you have to de-lombok the whole project. No. Problem is Kotlin, the way it compiles, it just doesn't it can't get this preprocessed annotation, so it doesn't you can't access the, let's say, the getters and whatever it generates from Kotlin code. So what you can do, if you don't want to do like generation for everywhere, you can only de-lombok the classes that you use or convert them to Kotlin. Because you can also convert classes to Kotlin, and IntelliJ will just do it with a hotkey or when you paste code into a Kotlin class, and it works. I wouldn't say it creates beautiful Kotlin code, because Kotlin is way more concise and basically does a Java style Kotlin code, but it works. So you can convert anything you want to Kotlin and then refactor if you want. But yeah, the whole idea is you just, in the normal case, you just start writing code in Kotlin. No any additional actions required. No backward compatibility problems. Just works.
So basically, historically, I was a hater of Lombok, right? So now I got just another argument against it. So if you use Lombok, you won't be able to use Kotlin. Even if I never going to use Kotlin myself, I can use that argument against Lombok, right? Okay, Maria or Han, what's your opinion about Kotlin? Have you had any chance to just briefly touch it, or maybe read something about it? How it compares about your impressions for Scala?
Unfortunately, I don't have any experience with Kotlin. I just read some common articles, but it's not enough to have strong opinion. Just some very significant knowledges.
I can tell you what the old school Java developers, their favorite kind of argument they use. They call it's all syntax sugar. It doesn't bring any fundamental change. Well, it does.
Actually, I'd say even if it's really just syntax sugar, and this syntax sugar gives us an opportunity to write better code with less boilerplate, less problems, it's already something really good, something really useful.
Yes, because in the end, it reduces the cost. Because when someone reads your code and the code is more concise, I don't mean ambiguous though, when it's concise, it means the person actually spends less time reading the code. And which means any debugging, fixing, supporting, writing new code on top of your code is just easier. Which means, yes, conciseness is money. So that's true. And the reason is it's not only there are several fundamental Java problems fixed in that language. Like I can tell you, it has null safety. So yes, Java has optional, but you can still get something as null because you missed it. In Kotlin, you explicitly say if things are null or not, unnullable or not, and if they're not nullable, they will never be null, unless they're coming from Java libraries. In this case, you need to check. If you're using Java libraries that are not Kotlinized, there are not many of the common ones in the state at the moment. Things like Spring, they're all available with full Kotlin support. So anything you get inside your code in your class, if it's not nullable, it's not nullable. It's not null. It just works. And if it is null, you'll get null pointer exception. I mean, not if it is null. If you do a null check, which is also very concise. Then same thing with collections. All collections are immutable by default. You need to explicitly say that something is mutable if you need it very much. And all properties, I'm not calling them variables because variables means they're variable. All fields are final, constant by default, which means anything you write, you need to explicitly say that something is going to change, which means it's super safe in terms of things changing unexpectedly. They don't change unexpectedly. And it's like a massive, massive improvement of ratio when you write your code, it just works. So when I was on the last time I worked as assigned as developer on the project, I was a Kotlin developer, and I would just do TDD. So I would write a test, write code, and then the usual rate of running the program and testing was 1. So I develop a feature, I run it once, it does what I need, I push the code. So I would never have this in Java before.
This points about immutability, immutable collections are very similar to Scala. Yes, the immutability and immutable collections are default options.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, actually, we interrupted Arhan and didn't give an opportunity to talk. So Arhan, please, what's your opinion about Kotlin?
Yeah, my opinion about Kotlin. Honestly, I've never worked with that in production, but I have some experience with the university level and that kind of things. So what I can say about the Kotlin, honestly, your statement is that it's okay. For example, when I always compare which language, technology stack, and so on, in general, I would choose. I always prefer to look at it like it's my own, let's say, startup, let's say, right? And I am picking a language to use for it. For example, let's say that I'm starting that's startup. I mean that I will spend for it some money and time and so on. So
Something went wrong.
sorry, I'm sorry, I just got.
No problem.
Yeah. So I'm always considering which language, which technology stack, and so on I would choose. So, for example, from that perspective, always looking why would I choose Kotlin over the? For me, it honestly seems a bit like the syntactical sugar, because all things that you have mentioned, like the immutable, yeah, I mean that's by default in Kotlin, right? That's also like the null safety and all that kind of things. But I mean, first of all, I mean, when you go with Java, you know, like the 99% of cases, what kind of things that you might get in the future, what kind of, like, you know, that you don't have that much of that, let's say that the knowledge gap probably, right? That what kind of problems you might get and how would you address to solve those problems. But if you go, like, for example, with the Kotlin, that's like a kind of, I don't know. For example, personally, I would go, I'm sorry, I wouldn't go even with Scala with the Kotlin. I mean, personally, if I would start a new project, maybe, for example, if that is like the big data project and you really need like the, for example, distributed, let's say that the distributed with the write a non-blocking code, good performance in that sense. Yeah, from that perspective, it makes sense to use Scala. But for any other reason, yeah, I think that I wouldn't use Kotlin.
It's funny you mentioned startups because I'm taking part in a startup after work for fun. Mm-hmm. Well, it also involves spending on money. So
if that's and you consider like what to choose, what to not.
Yeah, so we usually choose the best language for purpose, and we have like a bunch of applications in there. Some of them are C++ because we needed video streaming stuff and so on. Some of them are Python, but most of them are Kotlin. 0 Java applications in the landscape. Well, that's how it works. And to mention, so to kind of cover your learning curve thing is, I can tell you what mine was. So when we start, I came to a team basically 3-4 years ago. I went to work in a client team, so I was the only EPAM person in the team, and they adopted Kotlin a little earlier. So I went on the team and we had pair programming there, and I sat with a guy who was actually a junior developer, the only one in the team. So the guy, we coded together for a week or 2 weeks, and after 2 weeks, I was not only ready to work on my own, but I would suggest cool features to other people. So the learning curve is really short. Well, I also read a book while flying to London to do the job, but it was not a big book, like 300 pages. So the learning curve is very short, and I haven't encountered any kind of weird situations and strange behavior with Kotlin. Rather, yes, sometimes you bump into things that you don't know, but you get errors. You Google them, and you know what's happening. Same with Java, because if something goes wrong with Java, it's usually not Java itself. It's usually Spring or whatever you don't understand, which is a massive framework, and you can do things wrong. Same things happens with Kotlin, of course, but it's the same kind of same level of danger.
Yeah, what I mean is, for example, we use when you choose the technology stack for your project, doesn't matter if startup or any other project, you just pick the language that is best fits for that scenario. For example, let's say that again, I mean, why would that's my, let's say again, startup, right? Why would I choose? Because what I want at the end of the day is just to get things done, right? To have the project that will have that. I mean, it will be easier for me to develop, to maintain, and in the future to scale that. So, for example, if someone chooses, let's say that for Scala, let's say to write a non-blocking code, I understand that. This is really a huge advantage over Java, because in Java, if you are using like the RX and the RX Java, and if you're using like the future and all that kind of things, this is still a problem. I mean, you cannot you will have always, you can always face the scenarios when your code is when you have starvation of thread and that kind of issues. I understand it. But when, for example, when you are going with the Kotlin and Yeah, you can choose definitely. I mean, it has some advantages, but it's not that huge that I would personally I would choose it. That's not.
Actually, I'd like to answer that. If we're talking about new projects, just new projects from scratch, I'd say that Scala will be really good choice not only if we need some reactive systems or we need some work with Spark, etc., because Scala informs us to work with strictly typed model. So it provides us with some good instruments to implement a very strong type system, and it really good works with refactoring. And when you're making a new project, it's really possible that you will need to make some refactoring in the future, and then some refactoring again and again. And when your project is written in type-safe manner, it would be much easier because compiler will do half of work for you.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing with Kotlin. You get additional safety features. You get less code to write because it's a more concise language, and in the end, you will develop faster. That's the point. Even with this 2 weeks learning curve, maybe your first service that you develop will be a little slower. Although when you write in Kotlin, you can do just exact same Java code, but with a little bit of Kotlin syntax. You don't need to use any of the cool functional features or any of the syntax features that people like. You can do just the same as Java, but in Kotlin. It will not be long to learn, but in the end, your code will be safer and more concise. So I don't see why you shouldn't start a new project in Kotlin.
Yeah, let me ask this question, Sergey. If you, let's say that I understand the learning curve is pretty easy. I mean, that you can pick up the language in 2 weeks probably. I mean, the syntax is not that complicated, it's object-oriented and so on. So, I mean, what then in that scenario? Let's move from the other direction. What kind of things that, I mean, why wouldn't you advise, for example, to use Kotlin? Let's say that not the what would you advise, but what words you would give a person, if, for example, if you will start to use a Kotlin, but be, let's say, be aware that this kind of this and this and this functionalities, or let's say that some approaches is not available in Kotlin, and you have to know about it.
None. All works.
No, it doesn't work in that way.
Well, honestly, I've never had a situation where I would advocate for Java in my life. Sometimes there's kind of this question of when you're setting up a team and you are not on the team, but you're setting up a team and you say, hey guys, use Kotlin. And the team lead is like, oh, how do I do code reviews? And all these junior developers, they will code something, I won't know if it's good or bad. And the timeline is super short. It may be this exact time you let them write in Java. You say, okay, you try Kotlin next time. But if there's at least one person who understands how it works on the team, I would never advise for Java at all.
Yeah, actually, sorry. Oh, just go ahead. I thought you finished your stuff.
That's probably it. I would advise against Kotlin in non-JVM applications at the moment because I don't believe it's mature enough. Because they basically, the way Kotlin evolves, they're trying to make it a language for everything, or the language, or the language to rule them all. But it hasn't happened yet. So probably writing JavaScript frontend in Kotlin is not the best idea. I wouldn't.
I believe that was that's kind of a very popular decision for. Actually, I would say that is a popular decision for languages in JVM ecosystem because historically Java had this idea of being like everything for everybody and filling all the niches. Because and all the descendants of Java and possible successors of Java, like Scala, like now Kotlin and others, tried to put like those zero languages into each niche. So Scala tried to transpile, not probably to compile, but to transpile to JavaScript, right? Kotlin tries to do that, and that's probably kind of inherent idea of JVM ecosystem, because I haven't seen that in other words, right? Of course, yes, there are some transpilers from certain languages, but they don't have like that idea of transpile or compile their language to anything other than that. And I just wanted to share like one other adoption story, which is related to learning story, right? One of the projects inside the Panda adopted Kotlin. They were historically a Java and C# shop, and I've met a guy from that project who actually started writing in Kotlin, developing in Kotlin, but he was not from Java. He was from F# and C#. And the learning curve for him was actually the same, 2 weeks. 2 weeks and then some additional time to just get even more proficient. I just wanted to say that it's not only for switchers from Java, but basically for anybody who wants to pick up Kotlin. Why I actually wanted to ask and to connect this to our yesterday's discussion about Groovy, right? So, because yesterday we mentioned that Kotlin is actually biting some market share from Groovy in terms of Gradle, right? But is this actually common in Kotlin world? Like, is it a reason to choose Gradle for those who write in Kotlin? Is it an obvious decision? So if you write in Kotlin, then use Gradle and Kotlin DSL, or is it just something to adopt for everybody in Kotlin?
No, I don't believe so. I think Gradle is more like if you write microservices, you would often go for Gradle because you don't need this complex hierarchy of Maven. It's just simpler. This often works this way. I don't say it's the only way to go. And then suddenly you notice that if you create a project in IntelliJ, well, Kotlin is an IntelliJ language, so it's kind of it kind of makes sense, but they promote it. But also they care about what's the preferred choice. So if you start creating a project in IntelliJ, it would create a Gradle project with Kotlin DSL by default at the moment. It's not apparently so. To be honest, I don't have a lot of experience in writing complex Gradle stuff in Kotlin, but obviously all the internal things that you need to write as code, they're made much better because you have all the help from the compiler, and you from the IDE, I mean, and you have all the assurance before you run it actually will compile. But the DSL itself, the only issue I see is if I need something. So obviously, if I need to add just another compile line with yet another library, it's very simple. But then if I want to have some complex stuff in DSL, which I don't quite understand why something doesn't work, I Google it. I get a Stack Overflow or an article on Medium or whatsoever with an example. And because Kotlin DSL is relatively new, the example is usually in the old school DSL. And then if it's something more complicated, then they haven't implemented, I think, or maybe I haven't done it lately, but I think they haven't implemented it yet in IntelliJ, so it doesn't convert automatically. So when you copy and paste something to just check if it works, you need to manually transform it into Kotlin DSL, and it's not that convenient. Otherwise, it's it also you get better transitions in IntelliJ. You get everything a little safer. So why not? And apparently, because
yeah, I just wanted to say that maybe that is a drawback, right? Because really Groovy is is a de facto standard in Gradle world, right? And there is just an immense knowledge base about that. But that can be partially or sometimes fully compensated by the nature of by the static nature of Kotlin, right? Because if in Groovy DSL you can't just type control and space and see all the options because you just don't remember the exact naming or signature of the method and or action you want to use. You can really do that in Kotlin. It can infer, actually give you a hint of what you're trying to use. So that kind.
That's correct.
And if we actually continue the discussion about the development stack, because one of the questions that I had was, well, for Scala, I see and saw from the very beginning, I saw a tendency that they kind of tried to eat their own, redevelop most of the things, most of the infrastructure development libraries, right, in Scala. So is it also a case for Kotlin? Because I just don't have that feeling for Kotlin. Much more friendlier to Scala, not to Scala, to Java, right? It tries to reuse as much of existing tools from Java world as possible.
Yes. So the point is, first of all, every old Java libraries just do work. You just put them in Gradle, just works. Some of the libraries can be just better if they're done for Kotlin, because you can use some of the specific syntax to make some of the things better, right? And some of them are, well, let's say some of them you can benefit of Kotlin, like in Spring, if you there was this null safety, because Spring is kind of Kotlin native now, you can use all the nullable, non-nullable things in let's say controllers, and it would work correctly. With pure Java libraries, you need to do null checks. That's the reality. But on the entry point, of course, because when you use it next time, it already knows the reality. Then the backward compatibility is also available. That's quite cool. So anything you wrote in Kotlin is available in Java. There's a little of flavor to it, because Kotlin, for example, allows you to write methods that live outside of classes. So for those, you can also use them in Java, but you get a special class name for that, which is file name KT, because they had to overcome it somehow. So it's not beautiful, but it's also kind of a workaround. So if you want to use Kotlin code in Java, it means I don't know why. Well, you can probably do public APIs if you write libraries that don't have this, but it's still all available.
Something went wrong for you, right?
Yeah, it's not. It works. It works fine. There's another one which is quite cool. They have an annotation that unwraps. So you may know in Kotlin you can have default values in the function parameters, which basically means you can avoid lots of overloads with one parameter being as a default and then two parameters being as default. That's what you usually see in lots of Java libraries that you get, especially the ones that are publicly available. You get like one method with one option, one method with two options, one with three, and you have all these loads of variations which basically call a single other method with a set of parameters. So that's something that's kind of eliminated in Kotlin. They have default values. And if you don't specify it, it goes by default. And you can even not specify it in the middle because they have names for parameters that you pass. And obviously Java can't consume this. So there's an annotation which unwraps this notation for Java. So in reality, in Java, you get all the options. So yeah, okay. they care about interoperability. They did spend time to make it happen, and that's a certain amount of respect to Kotlin developers. They let you use Kotlin inside Java, both ways.
Okay, yeah. Basically, just wanted to make a small note for those who are watching us. So just don't hesitate in case you have any questions, just drop them into the chat. We'll try to answer that. So anything that is related to JVM languages or something that we'll discuss for this couple of days. One thing that we've touched, but and I wanted to elaborate on that is like this Kotlin Native, right? Because essentially here I kind of have mixed feelings. We have Kotlin Native, or Kotlin has Kotlin Native, where they try to adopt it to all the different non-JVM platforms, right? And we have Groovy, which also builds the bridge between JVM ecosystem and outer world. So do they do the same job? Do they, like, are they rivals, or is there something that we're missing and they both have their niche?
Let me give you a flavor of Kotlin Native. I think the idea behind it is that you can have a truly cross-platform application, but you can use native components in it. So what happens is you can basically write, if you write in a mobile app, let's say, and you want it to run on Android and iOS, then you write a certain amount of common code, which implements all the logic, all the API calls, whatever the app does. And then you only write front-end components with specific classes. And that's supposed to reduce the amount of code. And it's similar to how, let's say, React Native would work. It actually works this way. Difference is, just as with React Native, there's a curve for it to become a production-ready technology. It's said to be production-ready today, but I personally, maybe I'm behind. I haven't consulted clients on using it as a primary technology because I don't believe it's mature. And I think our mobile competency center are experimenting with it now. They can probably give better understanding of how mature it is, but still the intention is good, and I believe it's going to grow. So it's a cross-platform technology. The intention is to build to keep common code in the same language while using native features. That's how I feel the niche for it.
Actually, I think that I was able to put it inside my brain, like, so that I would understand the difference. The way that Kotlin Native is probably for outcoming interoperability, right? When we want to write something in Kotlin, but port it to something that is non-JVM, right? And GraalVM is more about like incoming interoperability, when with the support of Truffle, it can adopt some code that was written in a non-JVM language, but actually cross-compile it to JVM bytecode. Of course, there can be like another stage when it generates a native image out of that bytecode, but that's different, and I believe we shouldn't mix those different paradigms and types of support. So at least that's how I lay it out.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea of Kotlin Native is that you write something specifically to run it on those native platforms, or maybe you have written it already for something, and you want to port it. Well, in modern world, it's usually the first case, because if you write in a mobile app, you need all the platforms straight away, and you write it for all the platforms. So you're either choosing a native technology that is the default one, or you're choosing a cross-platform option, which is React Native, Flutter, Kotlin Native.
Okay, yeah, but basically just to close on the functionality of Kotlin, right? Because we've extensively discussed non-null capabilities, right, and safety capabilities of Kotlin. But what are some other features one would love Kotlin for? So do you have your personal like top 3 or top 5 which can be killer features for Kotlin?
I think so. Those are about conciseness, actually. So first of all, I love the way they have lambdas and streams. It's just nicer than in Java. It's more concise. It's so cool. I love the named arguments. It's just a whole new level of readability of code. So yes, IntelliJ implemented this feature where you have a method call with like 5 parameters. It will tell you which is which. But then even if developers use, some of them use this feature, some don't, and then it moves the code around, and I usually turn it off because of that. But in Java, it's just must have, because you don't understand which is which, especially if some of them are constants. And the reason, and that's the reason we have this code style when you need to create redundant constants, just so that people understand what you passed in this method, what field. In Kotlin, you can name the arguments you're passing to the method, and the IDE lets you do it automatically, by the way. And this allows you to not create irrelevant constants because you already have the name and you understand what you pass there. Apart from that, maybe and this goes along with the defaults I already talked about, which were default values that you can pass either as function arguments, or you can pass them in constructor, which means you can have they have data classes just as you would have in Lombok, so that you have all the getter setters by default and the constructors, and you have automatically, you can generate this class with some of the fields preset if you need them. So this is very convenient in many cases. And then the third one would be extension functions. That's a funny one. So if you're using a library class in your application and you want to do some additional operations with it, often, like on it, even not with it, but on it, and the class just doesn't implement something that you want to do. You write a method in Java, and you have this ugly syntax where you would pass first the class and then something that you want to do with it. In Kotlin, you can write an extension function. Basically works the same way, it's just about syntax. So that what you're calling would look like a method call on a specific type, although it's defined in your code. And that's very, it's unclear why you would need it until you actually start using it. Because you can have application-specific operations and collections, for example, things that you want to do with collections specific to your domain. Amazing. It makes things so readable, and you have this as extension method, which means you can use it in the chain of calls when you do streaming. So just super readable and beautiful. That's my thought.
Regarding the last one,
sorry, just of time, I'll have to leave like strict at
yeah, I believe that we will wind up because we don't really have any questions in chat, or like if somebody has questions, just use your chance to ask it in chat. But one last thing I wanted to ask before winding up is there a decent IDE support for that extension function mechanism? Because when I use the same thing in Groovy, because of the dynamic nature of that feature, it was just a nightmare to find where the actual feature for your component is implemented, because there was a composition of different extensions and so on. So is it kind of supported well and allows a good navigation in Kotlin?
Yes, it all navigates fine because it's a compilable language. And also, it all works even better than Java because they basically, JetBrains did kind of invested in this language, and they started it, and they open sourced it, and they are still kind of spending money to evolve, which means they try to do everything so that you have the best experience ever with Kotlin in IntelliJ. So you have all these funny things that improve conciseness automatically, like it suggests where you can make things smaller. So cool.
Actually, same feature exists in Scala, and it works okay with IDEA even in Scala. And JetBrains doesn't support Scala as good as Kotlin, so I believe it's not really surprising that IntelliJ IDEA will support all features of Kotlin really good.
Yeah, I mean it's more the opposite. They don't support Groovy well, and the reason of it being it's not a compilable language, so they can't determine some of things.
Yeah.
I have to run now, so thanks everyone.
Yeah.
It was a great conversation today. Sorry, I was talking too much as usual.
Cheers. Thank you, Sergey. And just as we don't have questions, I don't know. Probably, Han Maria, do you want to sum up our experience for the last 2 days?
You're asking me, Maxime?
I asking both of you, and I will probably also give my 5 cents in the end.
Yeah, I think it was great experience. So I mean that discussing. I mean, probably we can for the future we can also invite other languages, JVM languages, or maybe non-JVM languages, to just. I mean, why it would be stick to the JVM languages? We can like the languages that are close to JVM languages. We can consider them also. For example, for Scala, we can also talk with the Haskell, Erlang, and something like that for the future. But it was great experience, great discussions. I liked it.
Okay, Maria, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with Rohan. It would be really interesting to discuss sometime not only languages based on JVM, but also have some discussion on languages, for example, based on some concept, yeah, like functional programming, for example. And also it was really interesting for me to know about some common points in Scala and Kotlin. As I said before, I don't have real experience with Kotlin, so it was interesting to know more about it.
Okay, great, thank you. So basically, to be honest, I just wanted to add one more thing. When we were discussing today, I just got an impression that so like we're all this time we were trying to understand whether some language will or can be a successor to Java. Then, like, considering that the overall landscape changed, right, and we don't have monoliths when you just need to use one single language. When we have Groovy and when we have microservices, you now have a freedom to choose the best of any, not just of both worlds when you're comparing something with something, but best of any world, and use kind of even JVM, non-JVM languages aside. So it's just very interesting to see how they all evolve, and that we have an opportunity to choose what we really need in a specific case. Okay, so basically, thank you very much for discussion, and thank you very much for those who join us and watch this. Again, if you have any other questions, just you know where to find us. Just drop us a note. We'll be glad to continue discussion or answer any questions you might have. So probably that's it. Again, thank you everyone. Have a good rest of the day and rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.